Cindy, look to your right, look to your right. It's okay, guys. He said he's gonna steal. Welcome back to part 3 of the series. Of course, this video will be continuing the story from the previous videos. Now this part is going to be a little bit different. When I was originally creating the script for this video, I realized it was way too long and that it needed to be broken up in some way. The only problem with that is it all kind of just goes together and it just worked as one part. So I made the decision to split part 3 into its own parts. So this will be the first part of part 3 and the video after this will be a continued version of part 3. Now that's all I have to say, and let's go into the video. It's been a while since we left off, so let me give you a quick recap. The UK and France would start a war that wasn't even supposed to last more than 24 hours. However, this war would continue to become more and more significant when major countries started to join the war, like the European Union and the United States. This war would go on for 9 days and would be the most intense fighting the realm had ever seen. When the war was over, the USA, the German Empire, Romania, Russia, and the French Empire would all prove themselves victorious, leading to the dissolution of the United Kingdom and the weakening of the Hungarian Empire. Hopefully you all remember that, but if you don't, then you should probably check out the previous parts before you watch this video. This war would leave a huge mark on the realm, and it would set the stage for upcoming wars. Unlike the last major war, the realm did not become inactive after this war, and it would actually remain active. The first thing that would happen after the war occurred happened on November 20th when Dunklin formed Iraq. If you don't remember, Dunklin was the same person who led the French Empire during the first part of World War II. The same day, the Byzantine would make its first move in the world and it would buy all of Turkey. Then 2 days later, they get involved in a conflict with the Portuguese, similar to how he got into conflict with the Portuguese a few months earlier when Tiger first formed the United Kingdom. So basically what happened is the leader of the Byzantine Empire, aka Tiger, is in New Portugal with power, aka the leader of the Hungarian Empire. They decide to look for the Portuguese bunker, which is located in the region. After an extensive search using locator maps, they were eventually able to find the Portuguese bunker. The Portuguese would catch them in the act and would tell them to leave, but they would not leave unless they got the region of Wales located in the British Isles. At first, the Portuguese refused to cede it over to the Byzantine Empire, but then power stepped in and threatened the Portuguese to try to get them to cede it over. The Portuguese were confused as to why power was helping the same person he was just at war with 4 days prior, so they asked him why he was helping Tiger, and it turned out that Tiger had actually paid Power $5 just for him to help him get Wales. The Portuguese then asked Power if he'd continue to help Tiger if they gave him Wales, and Power responded by saying that he would not. So that's when the Portuguese finally agreed and gave the Byzantine Empire the region of Wales. After that, Tiger and Power left the bunker, but once they arrived to the surface, the angered Portuguese jumped Tiger. The fight was a 1v3 in the Portuguese favor, but despite that, they still lost the fight to Tiger. The Byzantine Empire and the Portuguese Empire never actually declared war on each other after this event, but they kind of just silently moved on from it and acted like nothing ever even happened. However, this significantly hurt the Portuguese morale, considering they just lost a humiliating fight while losing 2 god apples. It's definitely one of the more strange events occur in history, but it contributes to the buildup of what's going to happen to the Portuguese in the future. The next day, the Hungarian Empire bought a ton of land in India and integrated it as a puppet state named the Hungarian Raj. This was done to provide a place for Hungarians to escape in the event that Hungary falls. So I hope you remember Mr. Dragon, you know, the same guy that helped the French a lot during early World War II? Well, after that war, he developed a large ego and thought he was just sort of better than everybody else. Because of this ego, he went around with a big mouth and would do things like killing weaker players, threatening larger countries, and more. But there was one country in particular that Mr. Dragon had killed the most members of, and that was the one and only German Empire. The Germans were rich, and even their weaker members like Fischer and Slick had a lot of stuff to take, hence why he targeted them. The Germans of course did not take this behavior lightly by any means. Me, being the leader of the German Empire, did not immediately kill him, since he was very careful with his terrorizing. You see, he would only play during hours I was not, and he would use skulls to hide himself from the map. So instead, I demanded for the French Empire to instantly kick Mr. Dragon from their nation, so he had no one to back him up in case I was able to catch Mr. Dragon off guard and kill him. The French responded by kicking Mr. Dragon, as I had asked for, but for whatever reason, they allowed Mr. Dragon to have some lands that the French owned in the British Isles. He would name his land that he now ruled the British Empire, but there's one problem. I asked for Mr. Dragon to be kicked out of the French Empire and to be completely homeless and to not own a country, especially one the French gave to him out of pity. A few days later, I found out that even after the French had kicked Mr. Dragon out of their nation, they still kept strong ties with each other. They had even formed a secret alliance with each other. This made me and a lot of other people mad because we had all grown a grudge against Mr. Dragon, and we didn't really like him having any people associate with him. On December 3rd, I found out that the French were going to give Mr. Dragon some of their land in the mainland of their country. Now, I already hated Mr. Dragon, so I did not want him to expand any more into Europe, and so the only way I could stop Mr. Dragon from expanding is by invading his one and only ally, the French Empire. Why didn't I just invade Mr. Dragon himself, you may ask? Well, I want his one and only ally to be gone, so he would be completely cut off on a small island and would likely not be able to terrorize the Germans. Anyway, the German Empire officially declared war on the French Empire on December 3rd. The Germans swiftly moved into French territory and had captured Paris within a few minutes of the war starting without any French retaliation. They were simply just too scared to fight. Shortly after the capturing of Paris, the French had pathetically surrendered. The Germans didn't show any mercy in the peace treaty and ended up annexing all of the French Empire. And just like that, the reign of an empire that had lasted for more than 3 months ended in half an hour. Despite the fact that Mr. Dragon was now all alone, he would continue his reign of terror, and if anything, it had gotten worse. This is because Mr. Dragon had now made it his only goal to secure France once again and to crush the German Empire. He did not care if he died or lost everything he had. He only cared about this one goal of seeking revenge for what the German Empire had done to his only ally. With this motivation for revenge, he would continue to massacre weaker Germans and steal all they had, as well as destroying their homes. Mr. Dragon would be caught off guard on December 9th when he decided to sit in Berlin and wait for people to kill. At some point during his waiting, I would log on to the realm and confront Mr. Dragon in chat, asking him why he was in Berlin. I would tell him to leave, which he did not, which resulted in me making my way over to Berlin and murdering him. Mr. Dragon was nothing more than a terrorist nation, meaning he really wasn't too powerful, so it was easy for me to kill him when I finally caught him. The German Empire did not hesitate on declaring war on the British Empire that same day because they were very fed up with Mr. Dragon. This war wasn't really much of a war. It was really just the British Empire becoming fully occupied by the Germans and surrendering 3 days later on the 12th with no fighting at all except for when Mr. Dragon was originally killed in Berlin. Like I said, he was no more than a weak terrorist nation who had nothing to fight with. On December 9th, Bismarck was ready to form a country again. He had done so earlier because the Fifth Realm Amendment states you cannot form another country 7 days after your previous country collapses. Therefore, he forms a Mexican empire, far away from everyone else. He would try to stay isolated to the best of his abilities, but unfortunately for him, that won't happen, and only 2 days after, he would get driven into another war. But until then, a few things would happen. On the 10th, the German Empire and the Hungarian Empire would come to an agreement to cooperatively own the lands of Austria. This basically means that they both owned the land. Because of this, the Hungarian Empire was able to reform Austria-Hungary, which further strengthened German-Hungarian ties. So now we will refer to the Hungarian Empire as Austria-Hungary, just as we did prior to World War I. On that same day, the United States would abuse their power after realizing that Romania and Austria-Hungary were taking advantage of them. But first, we have to go back a few days to December 4. You see, the USA owned Yugoslavia as a puppet state after World War I. It would not be willing to sell it to Austria-Hungary since they were still enemies. However, they would let Romania buy it. So what Austria-Hungary and Romania did is have Romania buy Yugoslavia and sell it back to Austria-Hungary. The USA would find out about this whole situation and they would be infuriated that they had basically made Austria-Hungary more powerful. The United States would use this as an opportunity to threaten Romania and Austria-Hungary into giving them 8 netherite blocks. Now 8 netherite blocks was a lot for the two countries to afford, so that's when I stepped in and helped them pay the netherite since I didn't want my close ally Austria-Hungary to fall into war again. Using these netherite blocks, the United States would buy what could be considered as the Louisiana Territory. It's now December 11th, and Mexico is doing pretty good. However, Austria-Hungary and the Byzantine are not happy that Bismarck is back. You see, the Byzantine and Austria-Hungary did not really mind Bismarck associating with Mr. Dragon before he was a literal terrorist. However, after Bismarck continued to associate with Mr. Dragon even after he became a terrorist, it made them not really like Bismarck. And the fact that he was now independent once again made them even more mad. So what exactly are they going to do about this, you may ask? Well, Power and Tiger are going to go over to Mexico and kill Bismarck. So the two went over to the capital city named Mexico City while Bismarck was online and attacked him. Nothing much really happened in this fight other than Bismarck combat logging after about 30 seconds. There were no casualties. After this fight, the Mexican Empire said they would declare war on Austria-Hungary and the Byzantine Empire. Austria-Hungary would be able to negotiate their way out of the war by saying they would no longer attack the Mexican Empire, and besides, the Mexican Empire could not really take on Austria-Hungary. On the other hand, the Byzantine Empire did not care what the Mexican Empire did. So that same day the attack happened, the Mexican Empire declared war on the Byzantine Empire. The Byzantine Empire did not have much of a chance to win by themselves, so they paid Romania 16 diamond blocks to help them in the war. The first thing that the Romanians and the Byzantine did was go over to Mexico City and occupy the area after Basemac logged back online. While they were doing that, Basemac was unknowingly all the way in Europe at Bucharest, the capital of Romania. With Romanians and Byzantines distracted, Basemac would grief Bucharest. It wasn't until after Basemac was done griefing when the Romanians and Byzantine realized that Basemac had basically completely destroyed Bucharest except for a few buildings. So they left Mexico City and quickly went over to an area of the Byzantine close to Bucharest and prepared for a fight. As they were preparing, Basemac jumped them. The fight started in this area of the Byzantine Empire and moved all the way up to Bucharest, where they would fight for a while till Basemac ran deep into the mountains while being chased until eventually combat logging. There weren't any casualties in this fight, but it was definitely a pretty intense fight. Although you would probably consider this to be a loss for Basemac, I'd actually consider it to be a loss for Romania and the Byzantine. This is because they had used a lot of supplies in this fight, and now Bucharest was in ruins. Because of this, Romania decided to negotiate peace with the Mexican Empire, and after this, Romania gave all of their mainland to Austria-Hungary, who was a close friend of Romania, and moved to their land they owned in Australia and became, well, Australia. They did this because they believed there was nothing left for them in Europe. Now, the Byzantine was all alone against the Mexican Empire. Now, on the other hand, Power made a deal with Basemac to secretly help him by supplying him and helping him coordinate through battles in return for southern Italy, which had been taken from him in World War II, and the remainder of the Byzantine lands in the east. The war would kind of stop, I guess you could say, for the next couple of days. This was entirely because Basemac did not play during the weekdays. But when Basemac would return on the 16th, he recruited LeBron James fan to help him fight, and yes, the same LeBron James fan from World War II. Him and Basemac would then march their way to the Byzantine and have a confrontation with Tiger. However, Tiger is ready for a fight, and Power had warned Basemac that Tiger would put up a pretty good fight, so Basemac and LeBron would come prepared. And when they attacked, they quickly learned that Tiger would not be as easy to kill as Power had said. Tiger had many potions to use to keep him alive during the fight, which would help him kill LeBron. Eventually, after a hard-fought fight, he would run out of supplies and retreat from his land. Basemac would then occupy all of the Byzantine and grief the capital. Basemac was feeling cocky after his first win, so he declared war on the Finnish Empire the next day, which was very unexpected. The only reason I could even think as to why he would declare war on Finland is probably because Finland is the only former member of the EU that he could kill, and because he was cocky. And if you don't remember, the EU declared war on France when Basemac was leader back in World War II. This further decreased Basemac's likability in the world, and this whole situation started to get the attention of other countries. On the 17th, not much would happen, although Mexican forces would arrive in Finland and torment the members. On the 18th, the situation would really start to gain attention with people such as Slick getting involved. Slick was in the German Empire, but would end up volunteering on the Byzantine and Finnish side and help defeat Mexico. At this point, the war had developed out of Basemac's favor, and this can be seen during an early morning skirmish between Tiger and LeBron, in which LeBron would combat log, which had become pretty uncommon of him at this point, since this was not his first time. This was the reasons for some allegations to pop up from me accusing LeBron of being an alt account of Stamp SJG. Now you're probably wondering who that is. Well, Stamp had played on my last realms of mine, and he had been permanently banned for cheating. The reason for these allegations popping up is because I was aware of the fact that Basemac shared the account info of LeBron with other people. Another reason, and my main reason, is because Stamp had been notoriously known for combat logging on all of my realms, which LeBron was resembling, which made me think that this could have been Stamp. It was very far-fetched at the time, but more and more people would begin to believe me later. Anyway, let's focus on the fighting. After some early morning skirmishes, there would be a large fight later, consisting of mostly volunteers, Byzantines, and Finnish forces, as well as Basemac and LeBron on Mexico's side. This fight would take place in the capital city of Finland, which would eventually lead to both Basemac and LeBron combat logging, as they had usually done. You would think that it would have been over for the two at this point, since their spawns were being trapped and because Mexico had already made so many enemies, but Power would change that. Remember how I said Power was secretly helping Basemac? Well, Power would be asked by Basemac to remove the spawn traps and to allow Basemac and LeBron safely escape. So Power complied and safely removed the trap at LeBron's spawn point. He then moved over to Basemac's spawn point, but as he was about to fix it, Slick came over to Basemac's trap and Power had to log out, so he wouldn't be caught helping Basemac. Power needed a plan to get Slick and the others that would come later to get away from the trap, so he told LeBron that it was safe to log online, to which he did, making Slick and the others run away to go kill LeBron, leaving Basemac's trap behind. This had effectively given Mexico a second chance to win the fight. However, Basemac and LeBron would not stick together during the fight, which led to LeBron being killed by a volunteer named Fortiles. Now after LeBron's death, some people in chat said L Stamp because of the accusations. LeBron said he wasn't Stamp, which sparked a heated debate containing all the evidence to why LeBron is Stamp. I decided to get involved, and I told LeBron that if he admitted he was Stamp and screen shared showing that he was not using cheats, I would not ban him. Now I knew he wasn't cheating, but I wanted some way to get him in a Discord call and get him to talk so I could prove that he was Stamp. Surprisingly, this worked. LeBron admitted he was Stamp, and he would join the call to prove it. But of course, this was all a trap, and I banned him anyways, as well as Basemac for allowing a banned player on the server with his alt account, effectively ending the war. Stamp would be banned permanently since he was not allowed on the server in the first place, and Basemac would be banned for the rest of 2022. The treaty had not actually changed the map of the server, but there are a few things that impacted the server after the war. Hayes, the former leader of Romania, would move back to Europe and buy what the German Empire owned of the British Isles and form the Albion Empire. Yes, this is really the color he chose to form his country with, but thankfully, he changed it soon after. Another thing to be noted is that the people will not overestimate Mexico in the future, leading to them constantly being picked on for a while. One last impact to be noted from this war was the signing of one of the most important amendments to the realm rules, the combat logging rule, which had officially made it illegal. Nothing much would happen after the war had ended except for Hayes' notable progress in his new country. He wanted to dedicate the Albion to simply a building country instead of a war-fighting country, as it had clearly not worked out well for him in Romania. So within a few days, his capital city would become one of the largest. A few days later, on Christmas Eve, Basemac would be unbanned early and would go straight back to Mexico. Power, who had associated with Basemac in the last war, had grown to hate Basemac after he had found out he had affiliated with Stamp. Now that Basemac was back, he could do something about it, so he would make an alt account named Pinklich and become a member of Iraq. Why'd he join Iraq specifically? This is because Power and the leader of Iraq, aka Dunklin, were pretty good friends, so he told Dunklin he would make an alt account and join his country, to which he agreed. Then Power told Dunklin what he was going to do against Basemac, and Dunklin didn't really like Basemac that much, which is why he let him conduct his operations alongside Iraq. So Pinklich, aka Power, would make his way over to Mexico to kill Mexicans out of rage of what Basemac had done with Stamp. He spotted a player named Akulas in a bunker, so he began to tunnel down to him, but then Akulas would notice him, so he started to tunnel away from him. Pinklich intercepted him and killed him. Then when Pink returned to the surface, Basemac would be waiting for him, and he would kill Pink. Basemac would respond by declaring war on Iraq. 10 minutes later, Pinklich would return by sea to Mexico and kill Basemac. Slick, who was hungry to fight in another war, wanted to fight in this war. However, I did not permit him to volunteer for the Iraqi army, so he would instead make an alt account named Tim Blicky and would fight on that account. The alt account wasn't necessarily like other alt accounts like LeBron or Pinklich where they would try to hide their identity. Instead, Slick didn't try to keep it a secret, and it was basically public knowledge that Slick was Tim Blicky. I was a little skeptical on allowing one of my citizens to go fight in a foreign war, but I could tell that he really wanted to fight, so I let him. Tim Blicky had already been somewhat geared at the time the war started, so when he logged on, he went straight to Mexico eager to fight. Tim Blicky was worried that Basemac would get scared and combat log if he saw both himself and Pink rush into a fight, so he told Basemac that he would fight him alone in a 1v1 in hopes that he wouldn't just combat log, to which Basemac accepted this offer. His plan was most likely to kill Basemac as quick as possible so he didn't run out of his already limited resources. However, when he would arrive to fight Basemac would drag on the fight for as long as possible, knowing that Tim Blicky didn't really have the resources to fight for that long, which would lead to Tim Blicky's death. Pinklich, despite the deal Basemac and Tim Blicky made, jumped in to finish the job, but Basemac would put on a skull and tunnel away after realizing he could not kill Pinklich. You see, Basemac had used his skull to run away from fights in both the last war and this war, which had made Slick/Tim Blicky pretty fed up with this, considering anyone could just run away from a fight and use his skull to hide themselves from the map. This made me hold a vote on whether or not skulls could be permitted in wars, to which the public voted in favor of skulls being banned in war. So from now on, Basemac could not hide from the map. This is probably the reason why Basemac would not log on for the rest of the day. Anyways, there would be no fights on Christmas Day, which is pretty self-explanatory. However, on the 26th, the fights would start picking up again. Basemac would be in Iraq early in the morning, when Dunklin as well as Pinklich would log on. Pinklich was not yet in Iraq, but Dunklin was, so Basemac would run into the mountains to hide from Dunklin. This bought time for Pinklich to come and back up Dunklin in Iraq. Basemac would be a little bit skeptical on coming out of the mountains and attacking Dunklin and Pink, but when he realized that he could just chug a god apple and have a major advantage over them, he decided he would attack. Basemac came out of the mountains and had an intense fight with them. Since he was outnumbered, Basemac had to do a lot of running and would end up spending a lot of time just on the edge of the mountains. The Byzantine, aka Tiger, came and watched the fight, but for whatever reason, Dunklin thought this could have been an attack, so he decided to chase down Tiger. Tiger would run into the mountains just as Basemac had done, and thought that Iraq must have seen him as an enemy, when in reality, they probably just didn't want Tiger close to them. So when Basemac charged back into battle, so did Tiger, who fought on his side. The Byzantine was now fighting a war alongside the same person they just fought against 8 days ago. The two sides fought long and hard, using many different tactics, such as Pinklich taking many hits while dealing many hits and e-pearling away into the mountains to heal his armor, using a Furnace XP glitch, and then pearling right back into battle. Dunklin would die pretty early on in the fight, and Tiger would be chased far into the Persian Gulf when his armor got low. Pinklich would chase Basemac into the mountains where he would lose track of him, allowing for him to run away and eventually log off. The dust had now settled in Iraq, leaving Pinklich and his fallen comrade victorious. However, Tiger had realized that the situation was way out of his favor, so he requested for backup from none other than the United States. Of course, the US would not help him for free, so Tiger would pay Bob Blair, aka the United States, to join the war against Iraq, to which Bob Blair agreed. The problem that Bob Blair faced was the fact that Iraq would most likely refuse to log on and fight Bob Blair if he joined the war, so he had to play it smart. Bob Blair went to Dunklin and told him that he would assist him in his war against Tiger and Basemac. Dunklin was skeptical, but him and Pinklich eventually agreed to let him join the war on their side. So Bob Blair would log on and arrive in Iraq and meet up with Dunklin and Pink. Bob Blair then told Tiger and chat to confront Iraq and the US back at the Iraqi base. Tiger would comply, and when the two sides met with each other, Bob Blair would run to the other side, but not to attack Tiger, but to switch to his side. And right as he did that, Bob Blair and Tiger would charge Pink and Dunklin, and they would be no match for Bob Blair, and the fight only lasted about 2 minutes, with Bob Blair killing both Dunklin and Pinklich. Iraq knew they stood no chance against the United States, Mexico, and Byzantine, so they decided to surrender right then and there. Bob Blair actually felt some sort of remorse for betraying Iraq, so they offered Dunklin to keep the southern part of Iraq where his base was, but he believed that it was a lost cause and would rather leave Iraq behind. So Iraq would end up being split between the Byzantine and the United States. Now, since Dunklin did not want to keep the land in Iraq, Bob Blair would still offer him a country in Poland, which was a puppet state of the United States. Dunklin would accept this offer, and a few days after the war was over, Poland was given to Dunklin. Now, something interesting that would come up during this peace deal was somehow Bob Blair was able to work out that Pinklich was an autocount of power. This basically meant that the United States was fighting Austria-Hungary again. This could have been the start of World War III right then and there, but Bob Blair thankfully told Power they had no interest in going to war against him, since he didn't really have anything to get out of it. But he did tell Power that if he caught him doing more activities on an alt account, he would not hesitate to tell the public that he was Pinklich and go to war with Austria-Hungary. With that whole war being over, let's rewind back a few days on December 23rd. Some allegations would come up about Hayes outside of the realm, which would make some people feel uncomfortable in the server and leading to some people even leaving, including the members of the Portuguese Empire. This meant that their lands were simply deleted off the map, freeing up a little bit of space in Europe for once. This had been foreshadowed for a while, considering they had been slowly deteriorating for the past few months. Now, Slick enjoyed being a German citizen, but did not want to have to volunteer to fight for another country or go on an alt account in order to fight wars, which is all he really wanted to do, basically. Instead, he would respectively leave the German Empire and take advantage of the freed up land in Iberia. Slick now ruled the Iberian Union, where the Portuguese once ruled their own empire. The next few days of the realm after the war, which we will refer to as the Iraq War, would consist of a lot of land purchasing. Some notable purchases consist of the Finnish Empire buying all of Scandinavia on the 28th, the Mexican Empire buying all of the Mexican mainland also on the 28th, Finland forming a puppet state named Kalyria on the 3rd of January in the new year, the Iberian Union occupying some land from the Byzantine Empire on the 3rd, and lastly Poland buying western Scandinavia from Finland on the 8th. However, that was not the only things to happen during this time on the realm. During this period between the Iraq War and now, Mexico had taken advantage of the peace for the first time in their nation's history and began building up large cities in different parts of the country. They had a city on the Gulf side named Mexico City, which would be the most notable and largest. Mexico also constructed a city on the bottom of the Baja California Peninsula with the bridge connecting the bottom of the peninsula to yet another city in the mainland. In order to connect Mexico City to the Baja California city, Mexico constructed a highway connecting Mexico City to the bridge. I guess you can say that Mexico definitely took advantage of the peace for the first time in their nation's history. Mexico wasn't the only nation that took advantage of these times of peace. The Finnish Empire also spent a lot of time working on building a large capital city and expanding their borders farther into Scandinavia. Finland also worked on setting up a royal highway system that would connect around the coast of the upper Baltic Sea with plans of making cities around the highway. The newly born Iberian Union would get to work on a massive underground bunker that would be the economic powerhouse of Iberia to run on. They decided to make it sort of off the grid in Africa, which made it hard for people to find unless Iberia were to tell people where it was. One of the greatest accomplishments made during this time was the construction of the Colosseum in Berlin. It was an insanely massive structure where fights would be hosted for the nations of the world to compete in. There would be fights all of the time that consisted of prizes ranging from diamonds to netherite. The Colosseum not only was a great source of fun, but it also brought the world together in peace. However, this peace would be interrupted by yet another war. This time, the Mexican Empire would face some serious consequences. On January 8th, Bismarck was in Poland for whatever reason. Dunklin would find out about this, as well as his burnt down Polish flag that had not been like that before Bismarck was there. Now Dunklin was furious about this and would start to talk smack about Bismarck for trying to start stuff with him. Now people in the call were trying to tell Bismarck that he shouldn't be trying to take what Dunklin was saying about him, and that he should go to war with Dunklin. And Bismarck would hesitate until finally he would declare war on Dunklin. Now you're probably thinking that this war is pretty pointless and it doesn't really have any reason to have started, and yeah, it really didn't have any good reason, but if I had to guess why Bismarck was even trying to start this war in the first place by being in Poland and messing around, was probably because he never really got what he wanted from the Iraq war. Like, he never really was the one that killed Dunklin, that killed Pinklich. That was mainly just Bob Blair, so now it was his turn to try to get what he wanted out of this war. Anyways, this conflict would start to gain the attention of the war-hungry nations in the world like the newly formed Iberian Union and the Byzantine Empire. Iberia decided to join on Poland's side of the war, and the Byzantine would wait to join until the very first battle started, in which they would join on Poland's side. Now, Bismarck had realized they'd made a mistake, so he had fled to Mexico City so he could fight in his home territory. Slick, Dunklin, and Tiger would all be attending the first fight, which would take place in Mexico City. They would make their way through the US and would meet Bismarck all alone in Mexico City. Bismarck would try to resist fighting by camping up high on a mountain, but eventually would jump down and fight them. He fought hard, but he was forced to retreat south of Mexico City, where he would be killed in cobwebs. Dunklin, Tiger, and Slick would decide to loot Mexico City, and in the process they found a bunker with some supplies and a large world map which was taken and distributed. This would buy Bismarck time to re-gear and escape up north into unclaimed territory. Slick and Dunklin would realize this and run up north to intercept Bismarck, but Bismarck would play this fight smart. He threw a bunch of lingering potions on the ground to lag Slick's game because he knew he was running on an old Xbox, so when Slick was lagging, he took the time to kill Dunklin, who was a much easier target, and then would turn back to fight Slick. The fight went on for a while because Bismarck kept running deeper into the forests, but eventually Tiger would come as reinforcement, which would lead to Bismarck combat logging in the pond. Now, if you don't remember from the Iraq War, combat logging was now banned, meaning Bismarck was to be punished. This punishment was not a ban, but instead to log back onto the server and accept his fate. Bismarck complied and would actually put up a pretty good fight against Slick until he killed him. This war with Mexico was over as quickly as it started, and now it was time for a peace treaty. Slick wanted the treaty to be harsh, since he had fought 3 wars with Mexico, and Dunklin also wanted this treaty to be harsh since he had also fought a couple of wars with him. With the assistance of the winners, I would end up writing up a peace treaty for the war that would end up completely carving up Mexico. The Byzantine would take the north, Poland would take the central area, and Iberia would take the south, with Mexico keeping the rest of their land. On top of that, Bismarck would owe a few netherite blocks to winning nations for the troubles he has caused in the past. Now, Bismarck would agree to these terms and accepted that Mexico no longer had power over any European countries. This war also proved that the Iberian Union would be a powerful figure in the world considering their performance in this war, as well as their past experiences. Now you're probably wondering why I even told you about this war. I mean, it doesn't seem to have been that serious, and I'd agree with you on that. It really wasn't that big of a war, but the thing is that this treaty would give leverage to the winners of the war because of how harsh the treaty was. And now we're here. Mexico's fought 3 wars in the past month, and it has now been proven that European countries are victorious over Mexico. And this leverage that has been gained from this war will shape the world's diplomacy in a way that kind of changes the events of the world after this point on. And in the next video, you'll see how they use this leverage, because trust me, it's not how you think they're going to use it.